Oh, come on! Really? I feel like Michael Scott in The Office. No! Gosh! No, God, no! 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 Okay, I haven't even seen The Office, not gonna lie. But today, the Red Wings have a day off. On the day after they had a very, very nice comeback victory in overtime against the Minnesota Wild. Thank you, Detroit, for spoiling Philip Gustafson's win and damning my fantasy team, but the guy let in 3 goals on 16 shots, so I do think part of it is his fault. Big 2-0 comeback. They were down 2, and then they won 3-2 in the third period. Simon Edvinsson getting multiple goals. Imagine that, eh? What a guy. But speaking about defenders on the Detroit Red Wings, what I wanted to do in this video was dive into some of the talk, some of the rumors, some of the ideas and the thoughts that have been linked around with the Red Wings and their system. Because I do kind of think that these topics hit close to home, for me personally. Primary Vancouver Canucks fan, of course. Because when it comes to Detroit and their system, we've had a few insiders speaking out about what it is they could target, and I ultimately did want to make a video about it. So, this show is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go out there, check out the first link in the description to save some money on your VPN, get some free months, and support this YouTube channel in the process. I wanted to go out there and talk about Frank Seravalli. Because, firstly, we had ourselves a video segment on the Daily Faceoff YouTube account from yesterday. Take a look at this, it'll be linked in the description. Will Steve Yzerman make a big splash ahead of the trade deadline? Daily Faceoff Live with Frank Seravalli. Now, that is, of course, a copyrighted video broadcast. It's on their own page, so you can go out there and check it out yourself. Links in the description. But what I wanted to do was dive into what Seravalli speaks about with this Red Wings squad. There's an article on Red Wings Insider, which will also be linked, which has the quote from Seravalli. Take a look at this. I think the Wings could really use a defenseman right now. Will they do it? And go out and find a difference maker, preferably one that isn't a rental, that they could keep for a while? I think that would make a ton of sense, man. They could really use someone like a Filip Hronek right now. I do think you're going to see an aggressive Steve Yzerman try and reward his group for the turnaround that they've displayed since Christmas when they made their coaching change on Boxing Day, bringing in Todd McLellan. Now, the quote, I get it. You can say, oh, he's not talking about the Red Wings getting Filip Hronek back. He's just saying they could use someone like him right now. And so let's just do a little bit of backtracking and understand where this comment comes from and how it is Seravalli is saying it. So, if you listen to the clip itself, Seravalli pretty much uses this point to illustrate the Wings' need for a D-man, a right-handed, offensively minded, puck-shooting D-man, and saying, hey, they could go out there and get this kind of a player. He's speculating that they would want to go out there and do that, and he even says that it was kind of poor asset management, which I don't want to actually agree with. I think that's a pretty bad take, but still. But he says with the Wings needing a D-man, they could be using somebody like Hronek, whom they had and they already traded away. It's interesting because the top comment on the Daily Faceoff video says this, that Hronek trade is so tired at this point. It looks to be a home run for both teams. The Wings get Axel Sandin-Pellikka, and Vancouver gets Hughes, a long-term partner. A reply says, we weren't going to pay Hronek the $8 million he was asking for, knowing that we had to pay Seider the next season. Makes total sense for the Wings who weren't close to competing at the time. And like you mentioned, we got ASP with that first round pick. And I think a lot of context is lacking from Seravalli's perspective on the matter, that, hey, the Wings were not really looking to be competitive back in 2023 when they made the trade. It was 2023, right? I think so. Yeah, 2023, because 23-24 was the good year that Vancouver had, but still, Vancouver was in a much more competitive spot, and they wanted to get a guy like Hronek. They signed him to a pretty reasonable $7.2 million AAV deal, which I think is reasonable now, considering the cap going up. It certainly wasn't like, oh, it's a home run deal, like, oh, amazing, when they signed it. I think a lot of Canucks fans are like, oh, okay, that's kind of beefy, but hey, they've got him locked on till 2032, so he's going to be here in Vancouver for a while. He's producing less this season than he did last. He's got 18 points in 36 games this year, on pace for 30 in 61, which actually No, I take that back. That's pretty reasonable for the defenseman production he's been getting. He just hasn't played a lot of games this season. But watching these Vancouver Canucks games the past little while, I have been of the mind that when Quinn Hughes is out, Phil Hronek is a very reasonable number one defenseman replacement. He's not a top-end number one D-man, but he's capable enough to tread water in that position. He ain't Quinn Hughes, but he certainly is the best defenseman the team has outside of him. Now, when you dive into the Red Wings, yeah, sure, Seider, best defenseman on the team. You could use some extra support there. Are you going to go out there and trade for Phil Hronek one more time? Absolutely not. There's no way the Vancouver Canucks would be trading away Phil Hronek. That is not an option here. So, with that in mind, I wanted to go over to another article which dives into a name that the Red Wings might actually be able to add. Take a look at this. It's The Score, Josh Wegman, earlier yesterday. 3 teams that should try to trade for Erik Karlsson. It was posted about on social media earlier this week that the Penguins would trade Erik Karlsson in a heartbeat. That was the report. And Wegman on The Score goes out there and writes the Red Wings as a team that should go out there and make the acquisition. If you told a hockey fan in the mid-2010s that Kane, Tarasenko, and Karlsson could all be on the same roster, they'd assume that team would be genuinely competing for the cup. But that's not the case in 2025. The Detroit Red Wings are on the fringe of the playoff picture as they aim to end an 8-year postseason drought. They enter Tuesday occupying the top wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference, but the race is incredibly tight. That begs the question whether Karlsson would even waive his no-movement clause to join Detroit. For Red Wings GM Stevie Y, it makes more sense to surrender assets for a player with additional term like Karlsson rather than a rental. Karlsson could slot in on the team's second pair behind Seider and serve as a key mentor for both Seider and Edvinsson. The proposed D-core looks like this: Sherratt Seider, Edvinsson Karlsson, Gustafsson Hall. That's a lot of sons over there. A lot of Swedes. Detroit could make a trade work more easily than the other teams on this list. Yzerman has a cupboard of draft picks and one of the NHL's deepest farm systems. The club also has enough cap space to take on the entirety of Karlsson's contract if necessary. If Erik's willing to go, there's no reason why Yzerman shouldn't try to make it happen. And that is a very interesting idea. It's one where I think a lot of Wings fans would kind of revolt in disgust immediately, like, oh, that contract is so nasty. The guy is making so much money. Forever, it seems like. Okay, it's not forever. His contract expires in 2026-2027. $11.5 million AAV against the cap in Pittsburgh. That's a lot. And the Red Wings certainly would be in a difficult spot if Erik Karlsson falls off and he's not able to continuously be an offensive guy. This season, though, I mean, he's on pace for the same amount of points, roughly, he had last year. 56 points in 82 and 23-24, and this year he's on pace for 54 points. It's not the 101-point season he had in 22-23, where he won the Norris again, but still, there is value in Erik Karlsson when you ignore the defensive irresponsibility. Maybe that's where the role comes in. If he plays with a guy like Edvinsson, sure, he could go out there and do his wild rodeo offensive stuff, but having a shutdown guy can be pretty useful. Not to say that Edvinsson is purely a shutdown guy, he's more of an all-round defender, but there is more defensive acumen, I would say, in some of the other guys the Red Wings have already, compared to Erik Karlsson. But I think that kind of goes back to Seravalli's point as well from the video yesterday that, hey, the Red Wings could be in the market for a right-handed offensive defenseman, a guy that can produce and that can lean into the power play, help the team get more goals, be a quarterback that's a little bit of an upgrade over Erik Gustafsson. Like, I'm sorry, Gustafsson has been fine as one of the main guys, Seider, Edvinsson rotating around there too, but Erik Karlsson with Kane and Larkin and DeBrincat on a power play sounds like a big upgrade. So, I don't know. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about these Red Wings trade ideas? Do you think the Filip Hronek trade was a mistake? Do you think Erik Karlsson is an actual tangible add here for Stevie Y and his squad? Let me know in the comments what do you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on. And bye.